Imagine typing this script on a machine that looks like a butcher's meat grinder crossed with a clock. In 1829, while most Americans were still writing with quill pens, one determined inventor was already dreaming of mechanizing the written word. His name was William Austin Burt, and his forgotten invention would plant the seeds of a communication revolution that would change the world, even if he wouldn't live to see it. Born in 1792 in Massachusetts, William Austin Burt wasn't supposed to be an inventor at all. His formal education consisted of only a few weeks of school each year between farm work, but young William had an insatiable appetite for knowledge that couldn't be contained by his circumstances. By age 14, he had taught himself mathematics from borrowed books read by candlelight. At 21, he was already making his own surveying equipment and mathematical instruments. But it was his move to Michigan Territory in 1824 that would set the stage for his greatest innovation. The frontier was a place of isolation and hardship, where letters took weeks to reach loved ones, if they arrived at all, as Burt established himself as a prominent surveyor and government official. He couldn't shake the dream of finding a faster way to write. Unlike many inventors of his era, Burt wasn't born to privilege. He was a self-made man who worked as a millwright surveyor and territorial legislator. He invented out of necessity and observation, not luxury. His workshop wasn't a well-funded laboratory, but rather a frontier cabin where he tinkered by lamplight after long days of surveying the Michigan wilderness. The problem that consumed Burt was deceptively simple: how to mechanize the act of writing. In an age when every letter was painstakingly handwritten, the idea of mechanical writing seemed almost magical. But the technical challenges were enormous. First, there was the mechanical complexity. Each letter needed to strike the paper precisely, with equal force and perfect alignment. The mechanism had to be reliable enough for daily use, yet simple enough to manufacture with 1820s technology. Burt worked through countless designs, each one a little closer to his vision. But the greatest challenge wasn't technical, it was financial. Burt had to fund his experiments with his own modest income as a surveyor. Every failed prototype represented precious resources spent. His family often went without comforts, so he could buy materials for his inventions. The isolation of frontier life added another layer of difficulty. There were no machine shops nearby, no fellow inventors to consult. Every part had to be handcrafted, every problem solved through trial and error. When tools broke, replacements were weeks away by horse and wagon. Meanwhile, his duties as a surveyor and territorial legislator demanded more and more of his time. The Michigan Territory was rapidly developing, and Burt's expertise was in high demand. He often worked on his invention late into the night, catching a few hours of sleep before heading out to survey another section of wilderness. In 1829, after years of development, Burt finally completed his typographer. The machine looked nothing like modern typewriters. It was a peculiar device with a rotating wheel containing the typeface, which would press against paper to form letters. The user would turn the wheel to select each character, then press down to print it. Burt was granted patent No. 5581X for his typographer on July 23, 1829, making it America's first patent for a typing machine. The significance of this moment cannot be overstated. It was the first official recognition that mechanical writing was possible. The typographer was ingenious in its mechanical simplicity. Unlike later typewriters, with their complex arrays of keys and linkages, Burt's machine used a single printing point and a rotating wheel. It was slower than handwriting for most users, but it produced perfectly uniform letters every time. But the true genius of Burt's invention wasn't in its mechanical details, it was in the fundamental concept. He had proven that mechanical writing was possible. His patent application described not just a specific machine, but the basic principles that would eventually lead to practical typewriters: mechanical selection of characters, uniform impression on paper, and linear spacing of text. Burt demonstrated his invention to politicians and businessmen in Detroit and Washington, D.C. The reactions were mixed. Some saw the potential for revolutionizing business communication. Others dismissed it as an interesting curiosity. A few forward-thinking individuals offered to invest in its development, but not enough to fund large-scale manufacturing. The typographer's commercial failure was a death by 1,000 cuts. The machine was slower than handwriting for most users. It was expensive to produce. The rotating wheel design, while ingenious, was ultimately impractical for rapid typing. Each of these factors alone might have been overcome, but together they proved insurmountable. Then came the devastating fire at the U.S. Patent Office in 1836. Burt's original patent model, along with all detailed drawings and specifications, was destroyed. While he still held the patent rights, the loss of the physical model was a crushing blow. It meant that future inventors couldn't study and improve upon his design. But perhaps the most cruel twist was timing. Burt was simply too early. The market wasn't ready for mechanical writing in 1829. The business world still relied on handwritten documents, and the concept of mechanical writing was too foreign for most people to embrace. The technological infrastructure needed to mass-produce such devices efficiently simply didn't exist yet. As other inventors began developing their own typing machines in the 1860s and 1870s, Burt's pioneering work was largely forgotten. His name faded from the history books, overshadowed by later inventors like Christopher Latham Scholes, whose QWERTY keyboard design would become the standard. Burt himself moved on to other inventions, including the solar compass, which proved far more commercially successful. But he never gave up on the dream of mechanical writing, continuing to tinker with improvements to his typographer design until his death in 1858. William Austin Burt's typographer may have been a commercial failure, but its influence echoes through the history of communication technology. Every modern keyboard, from typewriters to smartphones, owes a debt to his pioneering vision. His patent established the legal and conceptual foundation for mechanical writing devices. Later inventors, whether they knew it or not, were building on the groundwork he laid. The principles he established, mechanical character selection, uniform impression, and linear text spacing, remain fundamental to text input devices today. But perhaps Burt's greatest legacy isn't technological at all. It's inspirational. He showed that great innovations don't always come from well-funded laboratories or prestigious universities. Sometimes they come from self-taught inventors working by lamplight on the frontier, driven by nothing more than determination and a dream. As you type on your keyboard or tap on your phone screen, remember William Austin Burt. Remember the man who dared to imagine mechanical writing when most people still used quill pens. Remember that every great revolution starts with a single idea, even if that idea is ahead of its time. Burt's story reminds us that being first doesn't always mean being successful, but it always means being important. In the relentless march of technological progress, we stand on the shoulders of forgotten giants like William Austin Burt, pioneers who dared to dream big, even when the world wasn't ready for their dreams. So the next time you see that familiar QWERTY keyboard layout, spare a thought for the forgotten genius who first imagined mechanical writing, because sometimes the seeds of revolution take generations to bloom. If you've enjoyed this journey into forgotten innovation, make sure to follow our channel for more stories of overlooked geniuses who changed the world, and let us know in the comments what other forgotten inventors deserve to have their stories told. Because history isn't just about who succeeded, it's about who dared to try first.